welcome again. Great to have you all here. We're here for the 2020 Raymond G. Thorpe Lecture in the Robert Frederick Smith School of Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering. And so we're gathered to honor the legacy of Professor Raymond Thorpe, or Ray, a much loved and admired faculty member who had an outsized impact on our school. For over 5 decades, starting in 1951, Ray worked magic in Olin. He was known for the quality of his teaching, his high standards, his wonderful stories, and his unfailing commitment to the students, both for 4 decades as a professor, and then for another decade and a half as an advisor to students from all over the College of Engineering. And so he really defined chemical engineering as an experience for generations of Cornellians. So today we have the pleasure to welcome a student of Ray's, Craig Wheeler, who is honoring Ray's legacy with an exceptional career as an engineer, an executive, and a highly engaged citizen. After completing his bachelor's and his master's of science in Olin, Craig joined the research division at Merck. But as I learned today, whereas he thought he was going to be in a lab, they right away handed him a hard hat and sent him to the shop floor. And while he spent only a few years at Merck or in any pure engineering position, this experience seems to have had a strong impact on the definition of purpose, his topic today. And it seems that this is a definition, this is my interpretation that I'll be revised, but a definition in which the human dimensions of technology creation and impact matter most. So Craig moved from Merck onto an MBA at Wharton and then proceeded to spend over a decade at the Boston Consulting Group. This is where you'd think he might have been brainwashed into seeing only dollar signs, but not Craig. While he created a lot of dollar signs, he actually returned to his roots in taking on the lead of the Chiron Corporation. There, he transformed what was kind of an ever-promising biotech shop into a profitable pharma company that could commercialize transformative therapeutics and vaccines. And he exited Chiron through a sale to Novartis. So there's a question of, could someone do such a thing twice? Well, apparently he and others thought so, and he was named the CEO of Momenta Pharmaceuticals in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I'll let him tell you more about this story, but the answer to the question is a definitive yes. He could do it twice and did. And just last week, Craig closed an acquisition deal with Johnson & Johnson, a second enormous business success, and one that creates a pathway to bring multiple Momenta-developed therapeutics to market. In the midst of all this, and I'm always shocked when I speak to Craig, he has remained an exceptionally active and engaged individual. He is a model of work-life balance, and he has given back to his industry and community in myriad ways. Notably, he served as chair of the board of the Association of Accessible Medicine, and as he may mention today, has founded his own foundation to support activities aimed at social and environmental good. Craig has also been very generous to his alma mater, Cornell, serving from the earliest days on the advisory board of the School of Biomedical Engineering, and now serving as vice chair of the college's advisory council. So thank you, Craig, for being here today in the midst of a tumultuous month within a tumultuous year. I'm very much looking forward to your lecture on the power of purpose. So please all join me in welcoming Craig Wheeler, our 2020 Raymond Thorpe Lecturer. Craig.
Thank you. And thanks for the chance to speak with you all today. I really do hope everybody is well in these challenging times. And as Abe knows, I really wish I could be there in person. As Abe said, the company I led, Momenta Pharmaceuticals, was just sold, which means I'm out of a job as CEO, and I'm kind of at a major life juncture. Not totally expected, but here nonetheless. In some way, I'm like all the seniors at Cornell. I need to define my next chapter. It's an introspective time, and therefore, I decided to talk to you about purpose. And as I share my story, I ask each of you to reflect on a couple of questions. First, what does it mean to integrate purpose into your career? And second, what in my experience resonates for you that may be lessons that you can apply to your own journey? And to help reflect on this, I'm going to share some thoughts and events that have made my career meaningful. And they're events and milestones that really serve as motivators for me. And they're experiences that come to the forefront of my mind when I look back. These aspects that I'll talk about today of what I have done are much more important to me than the titles I've held or the money I've made. And I can also say with great confidence that having an element of purpose to my career made it a lot easier to weather the inevitable ups and downs that come with the territory. I can't say I had a clear purpose when I left Cornell. And some of the seniors here are probably fortunate enough to have found their calling already. But for me, all I know is I was receptive to it and it kind of found me. So what I'm going to do today is tell you these stories as if they were happening to me today. So share the journey with me. A purpose comes looking for me. I thought I was headed for a lab job, but unexpectedly, I was staffed in the pilot plant when I arrived. Now, the pilot plant at Merck is a complex environment. It's a union shop, which creates separation between management and the workforce. It has complex work rules. It has a grievance process that is often triggered if an engineer even picks up a wrench. And it has a set of disciplinary procedures that are often used by management with a similar hair trigger. Couple this with a bunch of 20-something, mostly white engineers in their lab coats and ties or blue uniforms. And we oversee a much older and mostly minority union labor force, dressed in their gray uniforms. As a young engineer in my first job, I found it a bit tricky to learn the ropes. It's been a year since I arrived fresh from Cornell, but the guys still go easy on me as they seek to teach me the Merck way. However, the division between us, though unspoken, it's always clear. Recently, management asked us to move to a 3-shift, 7-day-a-week operation to meet the demands of a critical project. We're working on a novel antibiotic now known as Premaxin. And even though this product is in clinical trials, there is heavy demand due to a compassionate use program. This forces us in the pilot plant into production mode, and as the final manufacturing plant is not ready yet. Now, we're really all happy with the overtime, but the schedule is wearing pretty thin. Monday evening, as the late shift starts, a guy who works in medical affairs approaches me. And he asks if he could bring a VCR tape. You guys know what a VCR tape is, right? On the product buy to show the shift crew today. I say yes, and I'm not too popular. And I tell the supervisor and the crew that we're going to use their break to see a video together. So here we are, 8 p.m. We're all crowded into the small break room. It turns out the tape is from 2 patients whose lives were saved because they were given the experimental drug Premaxin through the compassionate use program. They made the tape to thank the team that worked so hard to make the drug which saves them. It's emotional, and I'm proud to be part of this program. But looking around the room, the impact is profound. This is a tough crowd. The operators are a weathered group of union guys who hail from the Newark to Rahway corridor of New Jersey. Many are actually shedding a tear. I stand next to Dutch, a former ball player who wrecked his arm early in his career and became a chemical operator. He looks at me and gives me a big hug. Now that was unexpected. But a month later, what a difference. The one meeting changed the whole tenor of the shop floor. Many of these guys had been at Merck for 20 to 30 years, And for some of them, it was the first time they remember anyone thanking them or showing them the connection between the work they do and the patients that benefit. That common purpose and feedback is driving closer bonds, higher morale, and better productivity. I know I feel more connected to the team through this common purpose. This is the first time I can see a reason beyond a paycheck to do this job. I can make a difference by being part of a team, making drugs that really have an impact on people's lives. I may not have known it then, but my purpose had found me. Purpose shows its power. That sinking feeling that's been growing for the past few weeks is getting worse. How did I mess up this bad? I'm sitting in my office on the 31st floor of Exchange Place in Boston, just staring out the window. I thought this would be a real career milestone. I'm only 3 years into my Boston Consulting Group career, and I sold my first project. Well, that project is now threatening my career in this upper out culture. I underscope the work. My consultants hate the project and are complaining loudly. The partners are watching carefully as costs mount and the profitability is beginning to look doubtful. And to make matters worse, the client's getting frustrated and more demanding. What was I thinking? Selling an ambitious project like this to a prestigious but complex and dysfunctional Massachusetts General Hospital. My reason for selling this project is nagging at me. Peter Slavin, the head of the MGH physician organization, and I decided to take on the established order together, as we were both appalled at the archaic way cancer patients were being treated at the MGH. So much for combining my ambitions to be a partner at BCG with a quixotic altruistic cause. My options aren't promising. And as I sit and stare out the window, I'm thinking back to my engineering days at Merck. And there it is again, that meeting back at the break room in the pilot plant. Now I'm calling Peter. It's time to see if we can arrange a visit that might at least put the project in perspective for my team. Peter, who is equally frustrated, agrees and tells me to bring the team over to the MGH the next day. My case team is surprised when I tell them that instead of our meeting, we're going to go for a walk over to the MGH to see our senior client. But at least they're following me. Peter meets us in the administration building, and he's talking to the team in his white MD coat about what it means to treat cancer patients. He walks us through the halls to the Pediatric Cancer Center, where multidisciplinary end-to-end care is the norm. The team meets the patients and their parents, and is clearly having an impact. Their business demeanors soften as they hear the stories and sense the optimism of the patients. Peter signals it's time to go, and we say our goodbyes and follow him to our next destination. He tells us we're now going to the Cox building, which houses the Adult Cancer Treatment Center at MGH. And as we walk, Peter shares his aspirations that one day adult cancer care will be as integrated and compassionate as the children's unit we just saw. I know what we're about to see. Peter opens the door from the quiet hospital corridor. It's chaos as we enter the clinical waiting area at Cox. It's high traffic time, and waiting rooms are overflowing. We weave our way through the waiting area and towards the clinic, and a nurse hands us masks, which would normally not be needed, but since they have no room, they are infusing chemotherapy into patients on cots in the hallway. It's almost like a trauma scene. I watch my team. One of them is talking with a family from New Hampshire. The mom's a patient, just having been diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. They're on their third visit this week, an hour-and-a-half drive each way, all because the medical oncologist, the radiation oncologist, and the surgeon could not coordinate their schedules to see them on the same day. It's been 3 weeks since they diagnosed her back home. She still has no treatment plan or treatment. The 20-minute walk back to BCG begins quietly, but soon the team's buzzing. How could an institution as prestigious as the MGH be treating patients in the hallways and putting families through such hardship because they can't coordinate their own calendars and facilities? I'm back with my team the next day. I hear 2 of them worked all night to analyze the hospital data, and have developed a spreadsheet that identifies how the costs will be improved with better coordination. One young associate looks at me and asks, "Why didn't you show us how important and urgent this project is when we started the project?" Wow. My team is telling me how critical this project is. Now I'm sure it's going to get back on track. It's no longer my purpose. It's our purpose. Purpose. The fire within. It's impossible to know now, but I'm fast approaching a day that will have the most impact on me of any day in my life. As I often do, I reflect on the irony of it all. 4 years ago, I was near disaster with my first project at the MGH. And now I'm the global head of BCG's hospital practice, a small but popular and rapidly growing franchise. I'm constantly reminded now that a purpose-driven career can be a successful career. Today, I'm thinking about a chance meeting with a global health consultant that occurred while a recent meeting at NYU Hospital. He's working with the Rockefeller Foundation, trying to find ways to bring more investment in drugs and vaccines for diseases that were thought of as third world diseases. No one in the developed world was willing to invest in these diseases, as there's no profit to be had. It stirs something within me. Maybe there's a chance to have an even bigger impact. I head down the hall to talk it over with a senior Boston partner. I'm proposing to offer our services for a lower subsidized price to allow the nonprofits to work with us on this critical issue. We have a short conversation, and he agrees. Game on. After 14 months of hard work, it's in my hand. A business plan for the Medicines for Malaria venture. I also have an agreement to work with the Rockefeller Foundation, again at our subsidized rates, on a similar venture for tuberculosis. In reflection, all my business experience to date had not really prepared me for the geopolitical and social challenges of working on issues in the developing world. But we succeeded in creating a public-private venture that's already being looked to as a model to bring together resources to fight a global epidemic of malaria. I'm really excited about where this might go. Last week, the Rockefeller team asked me and one of my senior managers to join them in Ghana, along with other NGOs, to discuss ways to better deploy their donations. I'm proud of the way we're trusted and valued by this community. A high-level official from Ghana has just picked us up in Accra, the capital of Ghana, and we're on our way to Elmina. When we get there, we're going to get an official tour before being taken to our hotel for evening meetings. First stop, an old Dutch fort on the harbor. I think, great, another old fort. I've seen them all over the world. So we walk through the front gates, and the tour guide tells us about the Dutch trade and the way it both developed and exploited the country from the 15th century onward. What did she just say? I think she just said that the main commodity was slaves, and that between 30 and 40% of the slaves shipped to the Americas came through this single fort. Now we're in the lower levels of the fort, and I'm standing on a cold, damp room, and it feels cramped with 10 of us. It was used to hold slaves for transport, 100 to a room. There's a small hole with a slide down to the water. It must be a toilet. No, it's not. It seems slaves were shoved through there, and they slid down into the holds of the ships to be chained. Many didn't survive the voyage. I need fresh air. Thankfully, The guide leads us back to the surface so we can continue our journey. It's approaching midday, and as we emerge from the fort, we're hit by a wave of activity. And soon we're surrounded by hundreds of begging children, and I'm politely but firmly pushing them away with a hand on my wallet. The Ghana official asks me if they're bothering me, and I say, no, I can handle it. He asks if I know who they are. No. He says they're known as AIDS orphans. There are 20,000 of them raising each other on the streets of Elmina alone. For the most part, both their parents are dead from AIDS. They have nowhere to go. I really had no true feeling for the magnitude of the challenges in Africa until this moment. So I lie on my bed in a seedy hotel room in Elmina, Ghana. It's really hard to believe that this is the best hotel for 100 miles in all directions. And I try to process all I've heard and seen today. We must do more. We owe it to these people. Soon, I'm sitting at the table with the team from the Rockefeller and some of their colleagues from the Wellcome Trust. Our evening meeting begins, and we listen to a presentation about the health surveillance program Wellcome is running. They've hired and trained local youth all across Central Africa to measure the impact of NGO donations in the villages and cities of Africa. And they're using this data to better target their donations. I'm partially listening through my jet lag. I hear blah, 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 logistics, blah, 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 training, blah, blah. Wait a minute. Did he just say one of their biggest challenges is that local African governments who are embezzling the donations are assassinating the teenage data collectors to prevent them from alerting the NGOs of their graft? I'm really getting numb. I'm in the air on the flight from Lagos to Schiphol Airport in the Netherlands, and I have a nasty case of food poisoning. Sick as I am, I consider all I've seen and heard on this trip. The staggering human costs, slavery, ravages of a treatable disease, murder. It's overwhelming, but this damn purpose haunts me. I care. I can't look past what I've seen. We have to do more. Purpose. It's not about you. I feel bad about this trip before I even get on the airplane. I'm on the shuttle from Boston to New York. I will meet Dr. Ariel Pablos Mendez. Ariel has worked with me in his role at the Rockefeller Foundation as we struggled to get MMV and the TB initiative off the ground. I consider him a friend and have found his on-the-ground experience invaluable as I learned how to apply my consulting skills in the NGO world. He's an impressive guy, growing up impoverished in Mexico and fighting his way through a system stacked against him to become a successful physician. He views his role at the Rockefeller as a platform to make a real difference in the challenges facing the developing world. This will be an uncomfortable meeting. Ariel has been there for me as I struggled to make sense out of all I experienced in Ghana 6 months ago. He's my partner in trying to develop a plan to bring more of BCG's global capabilities to bear on developing world problems. But our call last week was different. He asked me to consider taking on the role as CEO of the Global Alliance for TB Drug Development. They're struggling to find the right leadership. Ariel said that he and all the others on the governing board have full confidence I can do the job. It's a very high-profile role. They've offered me $250,000 per year, which is at the top end for NGO leaders. Here's the challenge. I'm about to tell Ariel no. So Ariel meets me at the door of the Rockefeller. We go for a walk. We head up 2nd Avenue and somewhere in the high 90s as we approach the heart of Harlem. I think this is an interesting choice of routes. Ariel turns to me and says, Craig, I hope you're here to tell me yes. There's so much to do, and the team has so much confidence in you. I'm torn up inside. Why do I feel like I'm being forced to choose between two lives, two possible futures? Okay, it's crunch time. Might as well get it over with. I can't even hear the words I'm saying. Something like, thank you, but, young family, doing well at BCG, really not the right time. Ariel just stands there. After an eternity, he says, Craig, do you realize that more than half the world lives on less than $1 a day? You need to look deep and ask yourself, how much is enough? It's a pretty quiet and reflective walk back to Rockefeller. We don't really have much to talk about. As I shuttle back to Boston, I don't feel very good. The guilt's building. I still don't really understand why I said no. I may never have another possibility to do something so aligned with what's important to me. I chose myself over my purpose. Pain gives me a new perspective on purpose. Purpose, when it becomes part of you, is not comfortable. It's filled with ambiguities and false choices. It comes with more questions than answers. Maybe it's not about the cool cases I'm doing at BCG, not about the practice I'm nurturing in global health at BCG, not about the pride I'm feeling that we, BCG, were able to succeed where others had failed in the NGO world, not about the great places I visit around the world. Just maybe it's not about me. Purpose, properly deployed, can move the world. They said no. Well, let's see if this grand, manipulative plan can turn them around. It sure rains a lot in Bangkok. Well, today we'll see if my plan works. It's been over a year since I turned down that job, and I have learned that guilt is a powerful motivator. Thinking back on the audacious suggestion I made to BCG's leadership team at our last worldwide officer meeting, it's no surprise my request for $7 million to support our Rockefeller partnership was turned down. The company is sold out, and while subsidizing some projects may have been fine, institutionalizing a large financial commitment to reduce our prices clearly was not in the plan. But I guess it wouldn't be a proper guilt trip if I had given up on the first try. Time to go. The plenary dinner at the World AIDS Conference begins in 2 hours. Bangkok's fascinating. All the glittering international hotels side by side with poor local communities who subsist on the party scraps. Security is tight. Many global heads of state are here to show their support for the fight against AIDS. The ballroom is packed. Champagne and hors d'oeuvres are passed everywhere. I keep a keen eye out for the members of the BCG Executive Committee. Good. They're all here. And they certainly know how to work a room. It's amazing the BCG Executive Committee is in Bangkok to open a new office the same week as the World's AIDS Conference. I remember my call with Carlos Morel, the head of Tropical Disease Division at WHO 3 months ago. I proposed my plan and asked if he could get tickets to the event for the BCG bigwigs. He told me at the time that I was being very manipulative, and of course he would do it. Carlos gives the keynote address. He talks about the resurgence of TB due to the rapid spread of HIV. TB takes advantage of the weakened immune system and is killing many patients. I know it's coming. Let's see how the knockout blow lands. And he says, with emphasis, the creation of the Global Alliance for TB Drug Development is the best chance to find a new therapy to defeat this disease in decades. And without the tireless work and donations from the Boston Consulting Group, this never would have gotten off the ground. He stops, steps out from behind the podium, and starts clapping. And soon there's a standing ovation. This guy is good. I sneak a look around at the other tables and I see our executive committee in animated discussions everywhere. Well, it looks like it might work. Time to enjoy dinner. I'm surprised by an early morning call from our CEO. He wants to thank me for the invitations to the event and to let me know that the BCG Executive Committee has agreed to my proposal, and BCG will contribute $7 million in consulting services to the Rockefeller relationship. And in addition, they're already talking about how they could broaden out the efforts on a global basis. I'm elated as I pack to return home. Up to now, sheer will has been the only way to hold this effort together at BCG. Now there's funding and a will at the executive committee level to institutionalize the effort. It seems ironic that I already know I'll be leaving BCG in a few months, and someone else will now get to build this practice. It's nice to leave a legacy of purpose behind as I turn the page. And I smile as I remind myself, it's not about you, Craig. Purpose helps find opportunities. Fate works in strange ways. 6 months into my new job as president of Chiron's biopharmaceutical division, I shake my head as I walk across campus to Brian's office. I left BCG to take on a new challenge. My first day on the job was 9/11. Now that was fate. But Brian, a manager and trusted BCG colleague on the GATB effort, has joined Chiron too. He heads up corporate strategy. He called today more excited than usual. This sounds like fate of a different color. He quickly gets to the point. Remember the exhaustive database search we conducted to find existing compounds that GATB might license to test against tuberculosis? Of course I do. Brian did thankless hours of work identifying some potential compounds, but they were all logged deeply in various pharmaceuticals' proprietary pipelines, and many were being targeted at more lucrative diseases. He continues, one of the most promising compounds was owned by a small company that Chiron acquired last year. After the integration, the R&D team decided not to develop it, so it's sitting on the shelf. The possibility was obvious, but unseen by others. Fate indeed. We both know that we need to get this compound into the hands of the team at GATB. It could be a cornerstone in their pipeline. Setting to work, we plan to propose that Chiron donate the molecule to GATB. Put a few slides together for tomorrow's executive committee. The CFO asked the first predictable question. If the molecule has potential, why would we give it away? This sets the tone for the rest of the session. It doesn't take Brian and I long to figure that a new plan is needed. Now we're sitting waiting for a meeting with our CEO, and we propose our new plan. We'll donate the compound, let GATB develop it, and if it works, Chiron will have an option for rights to the developed world, provided if Chiron exercises the option, they would also agree to manufacture the product and provide it at cost to the Global Alliance for TB Drug Development, so they could distribute it at a low price in the developing world. A de-risk compound for Chiron and a guaranteed low-cost supply for the developing world, a market-driven public-private partnership. Sean Lance, our CEO, looks at us with an expression of, why are we even asking about this? And we immediately agree. We've just found another person who has purpose in their fabric. Sean is a native of South Africa and has already seen firsthand what the developing world is facing. He's on our side before the conversation starts. Purpose attracts purpose. Soon after, we finalized the donation of the compound and a meeting with a very excited GATB team. Sean has even agreed to join their board. I wonder aloud to Brian, would this compound ever have seen the light of day if we hadn't both worked together on GATB and both ended up at Chiron? Nope, we both say. Fate does indeed intersect with purpose in mysterious ways, and it touches me how quickly things can happen when purpose clarifies the route. Purpose as a compass. Well, now we're in trouble. I'm in my home office, pondering a call I just got from the CEO of SPL. SPL is our supplier of heparin, the core ingredient for our first product. He seemed desperate on the call. Baxter, another of his customers for heparin, was reporting multiple deaths of dialysis patients who were administered SPL source product. He can find nothing wrong with the product or his supply chain, but the FDA is shutting him down. And he's asking for our help. Now I need to figure this out. I pulled together a weekend call with my team. SPL's heparin is in our product. If they are shut down, so are we. I asked my team to get their thoughts together. We scheduled a meeting for the first thing Monday. Hanging up, I think about the implications. It's been 18 months since Chiron was sold and I took the helm at Momenta, a startup funded by MIT. I had a chance to take the CEO job at larger, more established companies, but I wanted to try the startup world. I knew the risks. Startups have limited resources and few shots on goal. This could be the end of the company if we lose our application. The faces around the executive table are grim and serious. Over the weekend, a second request for help came in. This one from the FDA, who is fielding reports both domestically and internationally of increasing deaths. They want access to our powerful analytics to help them quickly find out what is happening and to avoid a public health disaster. Our chief medical officer provides his assessment. He tells us if we lose the SPL heparin supply, it will require a complete restart of the program and could cost us 3 to 5 years. Our chief manufacturing officer adds, if we help SPL, we may be able to keep them in business, a much preferred option. But the FDA's request is critical, and our founder and CSO is solidly behind helping the FDA. Our lawyer weighs in. If we work with the FDA this way and fail to find an answer, it will invalidate our technology and we may never get approved. The debate's heated. Suddenly, Joanne, our head of HR, gets up and walks out of the room. What happens next is a surprise. Joanne walks back in without saying a word, and she puts a copy of our value statement on the table in front of us all. First value, patients come first. Conversation stops. I smile as I think about the last time I went against my purpose-driven instincts. Well, there's no going back now. The team's aligning. I reflect on how calm we are as we step over the precipice. We will help the FDA. It's the right thing to do. Looking back a week later, everything has happened at a blinding pace. We received samples from the FDA in 2 days. 2 days after that, my Momenta team, working 24/7, identified the contaminant in heparin, hidden beneath the activity peaks of heparin itself in the assays. This was the cause of the problem. A week later, the biology team pinpointed the anaphylaxis biology that was caused by the contaminant. The anaphylaxis was killing patients. The FDA and the WHO already put out the alarm globally. We shared the assay we developed, and now heparin was being screened all around the world. The crisis was over. No one else would die. 3 years later, I hold our approval in my hands. We finally have a chance to build a company. Since we solved the heparin contamination issue, Momenta has been in total survival mode. Because of the contamination, our supply chain was invalidated. This required a major revision to our application. We're also in court, being sued by competitors who claim we did what we did to curry favor from the FDA. We've had a failed financing, and we've had to face the capital markets 3 times in the worst market for biotech fundraising in decades. The list goes on. As I savor the approval, I realize that all of this would have happened even if we had not helped the FDA. But the benefits of that decision still amaze me. Our board supported us and let us keep the company together without a layoff. The team cohesion that was forged out of our decision was incredible. Considering the depths of the crisis we had faced with our approval delay, why did our investors stay with us? And more importantly, how, in the depth of our crisis, did we have one of the lowest turnover rates in the industry and one of the highest employer satisfaction ratings in Boston? My purpose is no longer mine. It's not, I will do the right thing. My little startup showed me that we will do the right thing. It's our purpose now. Powerful stuff. So thank you for going on this journey with me. Hopefully, it's evident that over the course of my career, purpose has helped provide the strength to persevere, to help lead in good times and bad, and to guide me when decisions were far from clear. However, I know purpose alone cannot guarantee success. It takes experience, education, commitment, and a little luck to have a successful career. But I want to reassure you that acting with purpose is not at odds with success. I know without doubt that purpose is more than an equal partner at many junctions. What speaks to you from these stories? Reflect on the experimental antibiotic at Merck, Premaxin. It ultimately became one of the most effective broad-spectrum antibiotics in decades. Does that say to you? Consider that cancer project at the MGH. It laid the foundation for what is now a world-class multidisciplinary cancer center at the MGH, led by a scientist from the NCI. What impact does that have? Recall that $7 million commitment to fund BCG's global health practice that came out of a Bangkok AIDS meeting? Today, 25 years later, it is one of BCG's strongest practices, and they work with NGOs around the world. What's that spark for you? Think about that drug Chiron donated to GATB. It was approved last year as the first novel drug to treat multi-drug resistant tuberculosis in 30 years, and it's saving lives all over the world. How's that for impact? And remember that struggling startup which did the right thing during the heparin crisis? Last month, that company was sold to J&J for $6.5 billion. What's that say about values? Take time to ruminate on each of these and how they may speak to you, how they might guide you. And most importantly, how does all this prompt you to think about your relationship to purpose? You know, I bet that outside of the sale of Momenta, you would be hard-pressed to find the name of Craig Wheeler attached to any of these events. In fact, please don't tell anyone at BCG the real story of the Bangkok meeting. It's better they don't know. The point is, none of these successes can be attributed to any one person. It's a group effort. I, at best, was a catalyst. So if you don't get credit for a lot of what happens related to purpose, where's the benefit? Good question. I can tell you I get payback every day. Payback comes from the joyously tearful meeting of two bike riders, 80 miles into a 100-mile century, in the middle of a sun-drenched cranberry bog on a humid 95-degree day in August during the Pan Mass Challenge to benefit Dana-Farber. Suddenly, one realizes he's riding next to a cancer survivor who is alive because of his company's drug. And the other realizes he's riding next to the former president of the company who made the drug that saved him. Payback comes from the soft tap on your arm when the person next to you at a conference dinner overhears your conversation about a drug developed by your team. And she tearfully and softly interrupts, saying, "Thank you. The drug your team developed gave my mother her life back." Payback comes in San Francisco with Brian last year, my BCG compatriot. Over lunch, I tell him the TB drug was just approved. Pure joy overcomes him, and for a minute, he forgets the terrible injuries he's dealing with from a hiking accident. And I'll leave you with this. That Pan Mass ride, it's been particularly important to me, because I've known many who've lost their battle to cancer. After 30 years of riding my bike thousands of miles supporting Dana-Farber, I found myself there as a patient this January. I was in denial after my visit, and I found my way to the Pan Mass Bridge, a memorial bridge joining two of the hospital's buildings, to the ride that is $1 million for Dana-Farber. I'm there to collect myself and see if I can find some comfort by spotting my friends in all the pictures. And a woman stands up and apologizes for being in my way. I say not to worry, and I tell her that I'm a rider. And she thanks me for all we've done. I look at her and I hold up my sleeve, showing her my patient bracelet. She does the same, showing me hers. And she holds my arm and tells me not to worry, I'll be fine. And I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Craig.
Sure.
It's a courageous way to tell a story. Thank you.
First time I tried it that way.
Yeah. So please, you can put questions into chat, or you can raise your hand, and either way we'll get you and get your question to Craig. Susan.
Thank you for that wonderful talk. That was really heartwarming to listen to. So you told us a lot of good things, and I'm just wondering if you might tell us a story where something didn't go quite right and how you learned from that.
Well, I
First
think the
question.
story I told you about not taking the job at GATB was something that didn't go right for me. I know you have these things, you have these events and turns in your life where you just wonder why you made a decision. I even today wonder why I made that decision, why I didn't take that opportunity. I turned it into something good, right? But I really meant, that was because I felt such terrible guilt for not doing it. I mean, all that I had committed to and all I had learned, and then they give me the chance, and I said no, right? So, that was probably one of the big challenges I had. I think the other one I'll talk about, it's not in the stories, but it's just a personal challenge. Is one of the things as a CEO you tend to do is, particularly, me, I really care about my teams and my people, is, you kind of hold on a little bit too long to decisions that you should make. And, we had a major layoff in our company about 3 years ago. And then never had one, in 13 years of running the business. And it was because we had decided to split the business. We had two sides of the business, a biosimilar side of the business and a novel side of the business. And we got caught up because we had a sale that had been negotiated. We got caught up in the China trade war and the CFIUS review of China, and the deal fell apart. And I probably could have seen that was not going to happen, but I kept trying for 6 months, and it really hurt a lot of people in the company because I didn't act soon enough. And we had to lay off 60% of the company. And so we turned it into a good thing. We got some of the equipment we didn't use off to Cornell and stuff, and we have a nice lab named after the company. But that was a place where I was trying to do the right thing and I really cared about it, but I in retrospect could have made a decision and made it easier for everybody earlier.
So we have a question in the chat. What would you encourage, from Susie, what would you encourage current students and postdocs to do before they leave Cornell so they can remember or find their purpose?
It's actually interesting. I knew I was going to get a question like that, so I thought about that a bit. And as I said in my talk, I didn't really have one when I left Cornell. But as I think about it, right, I think if you are open to it, if you realize that there's so many ways to have impact out there, I think you can have purpose in just about any job you take. And it's kind of how you approach it, and how you keep your mind open to why you're really there, why you're really doing what you're doing. Because we can make money in a lot of places, right? But when you're actually working, and particularly in the science field, right, where you're making a difference, whether you're helping people get to work, or you're helping people with their healthcare, or you're helping on global health, or you're doing all sorts of different things, you can find purpose anywhere. So I don't think it's something you specifically do, more than something that you keep open to throughout the course of your career.
Any students, sophomores out there?
There's a question in the chat, Abe.
We got one question from the chat. I'm missing one from the chat.
I hope that was it.
I have a question.
Matt.
Sure, Matt.
First of all, thanks, Craig. That was a really fantastic voyage, and I enjoyed taking it with you. That was hopefully great for everybody. What I'm wondering, so we as a faculty are constantly questioning our purpose, and one of the dialogues that I will share with this community, for better or worse, is a question about the curricular content that we deliver every year to undergraduates, and whether we're teaching the right things, and how do we update what we're teaching to reflect the needs and directions our students will go. So I guess I'm curious, in a positive way, looking back at your time at Cornell and in CBE, what was the course or something that you picked up along the way that was really instrumental that we should never touch or ever get rid of as a department, that you see as sacred in terms of your preparation for your career?
It's a really good question, because there were so many things that happened to me at Cornell that prepared me for my career. I came to Cornell as the first in my family to go to college, and before I'd been here, my work experience had been working on farms, and so I kind of started a little behind. And I think the experience of not just the classes, but the teams I worked with, the students, and learning how to work cooperatively, learning how the co-op program was amazing for me, because it put me out in the world. It put me on the airplane for the first time that I remember, when I flew down to Texas for Badger America. And you start seeing the world through a different lens when you take that academic experience and you begin to apply it into the world. So I think that probably was the most shaping thing. But I felt myself transforming all the way through. But when I started taking what I learned and applying it out there as a student, so I could come back and talk about it with the other students that had been through that was really, really influential for me. I don't have a company anymore. I guess I can't hire any more co-ops.
I'm interested, Craig, if you describe growing as a leader, and you from your shop floor experience, what it would seem that you captured a way to create what I think in leadership is called urgency for your team around the mission and ownership. And I think often we feel that this is something that some individuals have the ability to create that and others don't, a little like an innate skill or not. How do you feel about that? You seem to have had a eureka moment with those VCR tapes. Is it something that is a learnable skill? Is it something that you found you see the moment where you can create that team building leadership moment?
I think it's a learnable skill, because I think I learned it over time. I mean, I recognized it in the moment at Merck. Alex is on the call. Alex was actually in the other pilot plant on the same site at the same time. So
I was small molecule.
but yeah, so and then I kind of maybe learned how to exercise the muscle a little, but the MGH case was the one where I really first consciously remembered, hey, I could use this technique to maybe motivate this team and turn things around. And my partner in crime, Peter Slavin, who, by the way, now is the CEO of Mass General Hospital, he was wonderful, because he got exactly what we're doing, and he kind of got into the whole physician ethos, and got everybody really engaged. This was before HIPAA, right? So you couldn't walk into a hospital and talk with patients and talk with their families and everything now as a consultant, but back then you could. And that I think at that moment when I recognized what had happened at Merck, and then I actually applied it, and it turned the whole project around, I said, wow, this is pretty powerful. So,
yep. So we have some questions from students. Madison, who you met earlier today, says, how did you handle challenges you faced throughout your career? Did you ever feel lost? And how did you learn to trust yourself and where you were going in life?
You know, you ever feel lost? Yes. And I'll tell you a little secret. I've never met a truly good CEO who is totally secure. There's a little bit of insecurity that really is what drives people to be successful, right? And I really believe that. You know, you talk to people who come in and say, "I'm going to be a great CEO," and you're usually not, right? So yeah, there's been lots of times of self-doubt. You know, I remember that 9/11, sitting in my chair at Chiron it was amazing, right? Because I was gone from consulting, as I said, several thousand people working for me. They didn't know me, and all of a sudden they're looking at me saying, "What do we do?" And I'm like, "I don't know." So there's a lot of insecurity, and that helps keep it's positive. You turn it into positive energy, right? So I think that's an important piece. But I can think of several instances all the way through my career where I'm like, "Oh my God," right? That heparin crisis. You know, I told the story there, but the thing that really, when we got sued because we helped the FDA, I kind of lost my faith in humanity for a little bit there, but yeah. So there's this. You just have to have the resilience to push through. But what does it is your mission, what you're trying to get done.
So Mbaba asks, what advice do you have for those of us at the end of our Cornell experience in terms of choosing a job that aligns with our passion?
You know, I would say, look for, you obviously at this point in time, you have several different industries or things, and you're probably thinking about different ones. But one of the things I've always done, and I still do today, even when I join boards of directors and stuff, is look at the people you're going to be working with, right? Because that makes all the difference in the world. I remember going down to Merck, and I met the team, and I just liked them. I mean, they were passionate. They wanted to do it. And Merck was the most admired company in America, and it got me excited. So, I didn't do all the calculations about, is this the right company or is that the right company? I had that one come up, and it just felt good, right? So I think understand that you can be happy in many, many places, and as my career hopefully illustrates, you get lots of chances to change direction if you're not happy with where you are. But choose it on the people too.
Good. Push asks, thank you for sharing your interesting journey. What was your personal strategy, which was most instrumental in making others share the same purpose and vision?
I don't know if I had a really explicit strategy. I think my implicit strategy was that I just have a general faith in humanity that if you show people the right thing, they're kind of going to gravitate towards it. And I think too often, I see it all the time today, is that we never look. We really rarely look at what's good around us. It's always what's wrong. And I think if you can just point towards and provide the leadership towards bringing a team towards what really is the purpose you're trying to do, people almost always follow, right? They really do. They gravitate behind it.
Good. So I'm going to take one final question from Mancy, who you also met earlier today. Being a company leader and a CEO often involves a lot of guesswork, particularly with regard to future business trends and valuable investments. How do you make these decisions? Have you ever gone with a gut feeling that contradicts what logic tells you to do?
Yes. Look, one of the jobs, and this is one where it's important when you step into a CEO role, is you realize that part of your job is, looking around corners, seeing what's coming, trying to predict. But part of it is just saying, this is just the right risk. We're gonna take that risk, right? So we try to work on figuring out how to do it. And I'll tell you just one we took, which was really, I think, pretty profound in the company and what happened. We were working on a drug, and the drug basically inhibits, it lowers antibody levels in the blood. And that's good for autoimmune diseases and autoantibodies and stuff. But where it really is very effective is in pregnancy, the placenta has these receptors all over it, and it transfers mom's antibodies to the babies. And that's thought because human babies are born without a very robust immune system, and helps them. And that's generally good. But when mom and dad are cross-typed, mom's antibodies will attack and kill the baby. And there's nothing really treatment except for intrauterine blood transfusions, which are heavily dangerous. And it's kind of the perfect application for this drug because it, in autoimmune disease, all these other things happen, but in this, it's just you block the passage of antibodies and the baby's fine. So we decided that this was the right thing to do because there's just such huge unmet need. The first thing we did is we took it to our board of directors, and our board of directors says, you can't take this drug into pregnant women. Nobody develops drugs in pregnant women. We're like, well, that's because it only works in pregnant women, right? And we fought and fought and fought to get there, and they finally agreed. And then we took it to the FDA, and the FDA said they would be happy to entertain this after we got it approved in another indication and had 3 years of safety data in the market. And we fought and fought and fought with the FDA, and they finally agreed to a protocol. And then we went to Investor Day in New York, and we bought one of the fetal maternal docs, and we did this big presentation about going into fetal maternal with the drug. And the stock went down. And one of my senior investors from Federated, a stockholder, grabbed my arm and said, you are going to ruin this company. You're going to have one baby's going to die and this drug will be dead and your company stock will be 1/3 what it is. And we did it anyway, right? And the whole company rallied behind it. And, the first patient that got it, who had lost 4 children, and she went all the way through the pregnancy fine, and had a healthy baby. And I can tell you that because I couldn't normally talk about patients, is because she was so happy she posted it all over the damn internet. And the company basically called it the Momenta Baby. And we did a big photo montage when the company got sold in we had 2 pictures at the end. One was of one of our scientists who had died of cancer while she was developing our cancer drug. And our company petitioned to get the drug named after her. And then the second was of the Momenta Baby. And that was the last thing the company saw before we sold it.
I'm going to give Alex, your oldest acquaintance on the call, Professor Wilderness, the last question, Craig. But maybe he has to pay with an embarrassing story from your
No
youth.
embarrassing stories. I kept them out of the talk, Alex.
Well, I just want to go back to Abe's point. I'm not sure what he meant by oldest. Maybe longest term or something, not oldest. Maybe. Anyhow, so my question is non-business. It's related around the fact that, you hear all these CEOs, they sort of, CEO job is 24/7, and a lot of the families sort of crash and burn in the process, right? So my question is, and I know just talking to you, you have this passion around a lot of things you do, not work related, like hula skiing, all kinds of other crazy stuff. What's your insight, and how do you maintain that balance where you don't sacrifice one to get to the other?
Discipline. It's the only thing I could say. What I didn't say in the talk, one of the reasons I took a startup job is because I didn't have to travel a lot. When I was at BCG and when I was at Chiron, I was traveling all over the world, and my kids were getting through grade school and stuff. So I took the job at Momenta, and I actually told the chairman when I took the job, I said, just so you know, I'm leaving every day that I'm in town. I had to travel some. Every day that I'm in town, I'm leaving at 5:30. And all the way through high school, junior high school for my youngest and high school for my oldest, I was home every night for dinner and did homework with them. And then I went back to the computer after they went to bed and did my work for the next day. So I just forced it. And a lot of those hobbies that I didn't do much of those when I was the school photographer for the sports team. So that's what I did when they were in high school. but yeah, I kind of made it happen. I just forced it.
So it's clear, firm segmentation, basically.
Yeah, you have to be able to
Yeah.
compartmentalize. I mean, I think, one of the skills I've always had, since very young is I've been able to compartmentalize things. And there are a lot of people who can't in high pressure jobs. I think that's a recipe for disaster. I always use it. You've probably heard it before. Is you work to live, you don't live to work.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Thanks.
yeah.
Well, thank you. Please join me in thanking Craig. And I'm sorry we can't give you the full round of applause. But that was wonderful personal stories and responses. Thank you very much, Craig. And so it's a real pleasure and an honor to Ray Thorpe. And so thank you all for joining us. And we hope to be in touch early and often as we go forward, Craig. So
Don't worry, I'll be here. And it was a pleasure. You know, Ray was a beloved professor of mine. And, you know, I was never a target of his chalk, which makes me feel really, really very proud.
early success.
Thank you, guys.
Stay
Correct,
safe,
thanks.
well all.